Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. Today I'm talking to someone that I have known for a little bit in the bootstrapper world, Josh Pigford. So I first ran into Josh when he started a company called Baremetrics. Tuple used to be a customer of Baremetrics, and they do SaaS analytics. Not too long ago, Josh sold Baremetrics for $4 million and rode off into the sunset. Just kidding, he immediately started another company. That company was called Maybe. And Maybe was a complicated financial planning and analysis tool. And Josh, for this company, raised money, hired a team, and got to building. And I think in his own words, they ended up overbuilding. They built ahead of validation and customers. And after a period of time, realized, look, we're not going to make it on the runway we have. We're going to run out of money. It's also a bad time to raise. And he laid off more or less all the team and figured that this project was pretty much dead. But then he decided to do something a little bit unconventional, and that is where our story picks up. Now I'm summarizing the first 20 minutes or so of me and Josh talking, so I'm going to drop you right into the middle of Josh telling us what happened next.
Come January, like last month, I was feeling real nostalgic about all the stuff we had built, because I knew we had shut it down earlier than we needed to. Needed in the sense of like, it had not had enough time to be proven if the product could work.
Yeah.
We just ran out of money. And so like, I was like, man, I'm so bummed. I was feeling real bummed about it. And because we had just this like incredible amount of design work that had been done that, you know, for the most part loved by everybody, like it was, people loved the UI, loved the branding, and we had this like very full featured product. It's like, man, I would hate for this just to like rot in a private Git repo, and that's the end. So on a whim, like I had not even like talked to my co-founder or anything. I was just like, hey, I'm gonna just make it public. So basically it was like started a new repo with all of like the history ripped out of it and took out a bunch of API keys and whatnot, and then just shoved it out there, and then tweeted, "This is what $1 million in fintech software looks like." And
I mean, it
took off.
That's a great little line.
I mean, that'll get you.
That worked,
and it did.
It did. That was the top of Hacker News.
I was surprised. My biggest takeaway from that, or I guess my biggest surprise from that, was how little people tried to like tear it down of like, that's stupid. Like, no way does that cost $1 million. Like, no, almost no one commented on the price tag of that. It was just sort of like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like, just accepted it, which is true. I mean, we spent $1 million on that. So,
but you were anticipating that response.
I was anticipating a massive amount of blowback from people just like saying that there's no way that something like that could cost $1 million. And
yeah. Wow, that's funny. I also tend to mispredict negative things like that.
Yeah. Well, people get, but then they'll get negative about totally random stuff that like, what are you picking that apart?
Yeah. Sometimes I'm probably often taken by surprise at the stuff that people get mad about.
Yeah. Yep.
And so it's like I'm kind of wasting my time trying to predict it.
Yeah.
Or like changing my behavior because I'm worried that will be the response.
Sure. You just gotta do it and whatever happens.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, what happened next? So
that brings us to almost today.
Talk about that day though. Talk about the next 24 hours.
Yeah. So in the 24 hours after that, it's like very quickly starts taking off. Like, I think we had many thousands of like GitHub stars, which fake internet points, but I mean, like, still, it's people being like, "Oh, this is kind of cool. Let me like." So. I was just like, what are people? I mean, this thing doesn't even work. Like, it's not like here's this thing you could just start using. All of a sudden you just got Maybe for free or something. Like it didn't work at all because we had very complex infrastructure needs when we built it, and had a lot of that's around like SOC 2 compliance, SEC regulatory stuff, because we're giving advice. Like, we have to store every conversation with an advisor for like 7 years. So that stuff still exists on like AWS servers.
What's an example of the infrastructure requirement you have to like satisfy those things?
Yeah, so a lot of that stuff is around the conversational side.
Like data retention?
Yes. Like, and like data retention in that we have no ability to modify the data. So that's the sort of crucial part. It's not like we can throw this in a Postgres database and call it a day. Like we have to prove that we can't modify the data.
Interesting. Do people offer this as a service? Just like backups that are untouchable somehow?
Amazon does.
Yeah, makes sense.
For fintech companies.
Yeah,
so, but you know, but we just have to build all this stuff in, like, and you have to. So we're working with third-party compliance companies to like do all the paperwork to prove that we're doing this correctly, and
yeah, the SEC doesn't demand that you like use microservices or like a certain kind of backend.
They don't know, not that
right?
kind of stuff. No, but like even some of the data aggregators. So like we use Plaid and then Finicity. So Finicity's MasterCard's take on Plaid essentially. And like they have different requirements around how data is stored, the encryption at rest, and like all this, just that kind of stuff where it's like there are some infrastructure things that have to happen just to pull off the requirements. In addition, we had like something stupid like $500,000 in AWS credits. And so it's like, well, okay, that's free hosting, at least to start with. Like, but we just have to use it in like 2 years or something. Either way. So we end up making lots of sort of these decisions that build on decisions that build on decisions that like in hindsight, you're like, we maybe overcomplicated some of this, but like at the time that seemed like the reasonable solution. So that's how we ended up with this sort of complex infrastructure.
But so it blows up in terms of interest, like at least definitely passive interest. People read about it on Hacker News. They leave a comment. They start again.
I like the idea of a React-based personal finance software that I could download and hack around on. Yeah.
Okay. Is there interest from people like doing things? Does anybody open a pull request or file issues or get to work?
So when I threw it out there, it was like, no, I'm not going to turn into like a repo manager here of like trying to field pull requests. If you want to do something with it, be my guest. But like whatever.
Yeah. What was the license that you picked?
AGPL 3.
What does that do? What does that mean?
So it's like if you can use it commercially, but if you do anything with it, you've got to shove it back in, or like you have to give us access to it essentially. So you can't just like fork it, then do whatever you want with it and sell it or anything like that. Like there's some commercial stuff that it keeps someone from, like you could launch your own version of maybe with it, but you have to give us modifications that you make to it.
Interesting.
If you're going to deploy it.
Give them how? Like, what if you don't like if you like let you see them? Like, if you don't want them, right?
Like send them back to the like I don't know, whatever the method could be, whatever I guess. But like ultimately, we have to have the ability to like get your changes. Back. You have to.
Do I have to open source mine too, or no?
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't know. There's like a million sort of. One day I would love for us to like list out. Just have a bulleted list of like what ifs. What if I do this?
This seems important for you, for your company. Having this license to be what you want it to be is like seems actually really kind of vital.
Right. So this is different than like MIT or something where it's essentially just do whatever the heck you want.
Right.
With it, as long as you leave a copyright or like link to the license, whatever. Like this has to come back to us. Like you can't just. This isn't just take it and do whatever you want. Be doing.
All right.
And I based like a lot of that was sort of ad hoc, like just sort of quickly threw that together based off a bunch of other open source projects commercial open source projects.
That
I'd seen at the time. But so yes, so within like 24, 48 hours of doing this, I realized like, okay, there's a ton of interest here.
Yeah.
People are pumped about this. What if we could make it work? Still was not like, let me turn this back into a business. It was, what if we could just get it working again? That'd be kind of neat. And so that's when like pull requests started coming in, or I would, list some issues in GitHub of like, this would need to change if we want this to work. It's like rip out this AWS dependency, or,
Nice. You're like product managing more or less.
I started, yes, of just like, okay, again, if the community would like to do this, I have no ability because I haven't touched this code. I don't know I can't get this thing working on my computer. So like if someone else can, I would post like the errors I was getting on the command line trying to get this thing to work. And
okay. Yep.
So that's sort of what kicked it off. And then the number of people who were like interested in it, I decided to throw like a Discord server up just to have a spot for people to chat this stuff out and get it working or whatever, just because it's like almost like from an experiment perspective, it was kind of fascinating to watch.
Yeah. It sounds exciting. Like,
yeah,
someone's coming along and fixing up your code base.
They're like,
free.
Here,
that's
we'll
pretty
make
sweet.
it work.
Yeah,
like, okay,
I'm pretty
cool.
into that.
Yeah. So then but that snowball kept growing. Like the number of people interested, just
cool.
I've posted this a couple times on Twitter of like our GitHub star chart thing. Like it literally just goes straight up to 10,000 in like a few days.
That's cool. That's cool.
So,
but that's like, that's like likes though,
Oh, sure. It's like Instagram. Like, yes, it's whatever. It's complete vanity metric.
The people doing stuff though, that I mean, pull requests. That's some real
people
stuff
doing
right
pull
there.
requests and yes, and we had like over 1,000 people in the Discord server very quickly who were like asking questions about how to get it working.
Wow, that's way more than I thought. I was in the wrong order of magnitude.
Yeah. Yes. And well, again, this is like all of these things that sort of, again, on their own are vanity, but they all sort of point towards
but altogether
trajectory.
they start to coalesce
like,
into
okay, so maybe there is something like let's twiddle a couple of knobs and see what happens.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like A/B testing with humans in the sense of like we've now got something to be maybe statistically significant if we try some stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
So
what do you start trying?
well, just okay, maybe we can get this thing running. Oh, wow, it is running now. Like everybody's able to sort of relatively consistently get it at least to work locally.
Yeah.
And so at that point it was like, what if I started thinking through the like what ifs, for this thing to work, we already were going to have to rip out a ton of like all the advisory stuff
So you've decided the advisory is a dead end. You're out.
because of the regulatory overhead.
Fair enough.
Like, there's
I'm into it.
Massive amount of compliance
Great.
stuff that comes.
Okay, so delete all that.
Yeah. Delete, literally, I mean, it was a whole
that was fun.
app, and just, boop, it was like 20,000 lines of code or something stupid.
Could you delete one directory and it all disappeared and there were no other changes?
For the most part, yes. There were some like database bits, like we had to do some migrations to remove some.
Fine.
But like,
still
certainly from a front end perspective with the UI, the entire interface for that, and even back end ish stuff because of the Express. Either way, yeah, for the most part, it was just delete a directory and we're done.
I like that.
Yeah. So
that sounds like good architecture, man. If you get a good red diff when you remove a feature, like
yes.
I think you built it right. That feels good.
So as far as JavaScript based,
no, just in terms of like structuring an app.
Okay. Yes, from an organization perspective,
there's something about that feels really clean. Like you didn't have to go change everything else around it to pull it out. Like they were decoupled in their own separate operating things.
No, that's correct. And that's, to credit for Zach, who he's now back at maybe, but he was the original.
Dude, this story is nuts.
Full stack engineer, yeah. So, but either way, so we just start deleting stuff left and right.
Okay.
We have to rip out Plaid.
You got to rip out Plaid? Were you excited?
We had to.
It had to be therapeutic.
It was, but it's also like so much functionality was tied up in that. Yep. And it's impossible to use on an individual level. Like you have to have an enterprise contract with them. And so either way, that was sort of the first, like people started saying, okay, well, what can we replace it with? What does it look like to get it functioning in a non-data aggregator world? And so that was the sort of first big steps of people trying to replace it. And people were doing the work to do it. So,
and what have you landed on?
So we replaced it with a tool data aggregator called Teller. Teller's similar to Plaid, though they're only checking savings account support, but they have an individual use plan. Like you could use it for free for just your own bank account stuff.
Okay.
So that's what we integrated that. This is still all under the React Next.js thing. Like
Right.
we have not hit the point where we decided to do
I started
a
off
full
by
rewrite.
like saying we're gonna get right to the rewrite. We're almost there. It's been a half an hour.
Yeah.
But this story is good. I think this is legit. I have no regrets.
Yeah. So that either way, so we are heading down this road of like, let's rebuild it. It's still all in Next.js. So I mentioned Zach, who's the
Okay, hold on.
original.
Let's rebuild it. Why you're like what? Yeah. So you decide there's a bigger rewrite or something that needs to happen.
So this plays a role here. So like I'm still in Next.js React world, trying to build this thing. I decide like, okay, if I'm going to start this thing up again, I need to become functional as a developer. So then I start spending a few days trying to like really dig in and teach myself React and like modern Next.js stuff.
Good for you.
Yeah, and you would, if you like watch my tweets around that time, like it's just me getting angrier every day, and I'm just so mad because I hate it. And so then I'm like, well, at this point, funding starts. Like the possibility of raising more money comes in. Like I've decided, I think we can turn this into a business. I think I can make the economics work by not having all the regulatory overhead, by not requiring ourselves to be in the US only, like massively expanding the available market by actually removing features. So,
and you won't connect to my bank account and tell me what's in it, but I type it in manually, or you'll use Teller. And
initially, yeah. So, initially, it's like add manual stuff. We'll eventually re-add some of those aggregators.
That's where my brain went. Is like maybe you can just get people to type it in and save yourself like the biggest technical challenge ever.
Right. So, but this is where like the hosted for pay version of maybe comes in, is like the data aggregators where we will automatically do it for you.
Okay.
So, and then there's some stuff you can do around like dragging a CSV export of your bank account, or even upload a PDF and we can pull out the stuff from it. These are some solvable problems overall. But at this point in time, I don't know, week and a half in or something away from since open sourcing this thing, and it's just still straight up on like every graph that I am tracking of anything. And I'm trying to like wrap my head around what it means to build. You know, we've got a sizable React Next.js app thing here. It's just, there's a lot. And so I'm trying to wrap my head around like, how can I even contribute something to the current thing? We're also still hitting a lot of errors around, dependencies, because a lot changes in the JavaScript world in 2 years. And so, it's just, we're constantly like, okay, well, let's upgrade that thing so that it, whatever, and we're not hitting all these constant errors. So I'm like trying to wrap my head around that while also teaching myself this framework. And, but then it's like, okay, well, we can build the team again. Like we've got, at least $1 million in new funding has come in within a matter of days.
Talk more about that.
So a VC named Joseph Jacks, but the name of the VC is like OSS Capital. And it's like they specifically invest in commercial open source products. So like probably big example of that's like cal.com, big open source project backed by them.
Got it. So the model they like is there's an open source version I could use for free, but we also host it and
they also have a commercial version. Yes. And believe that ultimately allows for like highly efficient use of capital. So like you don't need massive teams, especially if you can build a community around your open source project. Because people are interested in just, even if they're not like constantly contributing, like they still want to contribute in certain ways because they want things to, I think a lot of developers are, I don't necessarily want to use the word altruistic, but we have the ability to build things that we want to see exist. And if we can contribute that to something that's growing and lots of people love, it also feels good to see your work immediately used by potentially hundreds of thousands or millions of people.
Totally. Yep. Yeah. It seems like the incentives point the same way, which is pretty nice.
Yes.
Like if I'm a developer, landing open source contributions raises my profile, like raises my value, right?
It makes it, when I'm hiring an engineer, send me your GitHub profile, right? Like show me what you've built.
Yeah,
and
totally.
This is an opportunity to show that you've built things.
Right. So you're getting, free code contributions. They're getting reputation boost leading to salary.
Exactly. Which I do think, yes, I do think it can have a direct effect on their salary, like their
Oh yeah, totally. No doubt to me. And then also, if they're users of the product, they can
benefit.
They can add a feature they want.
That's right.
I could fix a bug and be like, this bug is obnoxious. I fixed it for you.
I've done that. Yes.
Wow. I'm in. This sounds great.
Yes. So, and it starts clicking.
Wait, hold on. Okay, so it sounds great, but what?
Yes.
How might this also fail? Like, where might this kind of go bad?
The commercial open source concept?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you're not doing a decent job, and I'm not saying I'm doing a decent job yet, but if you're not doing a decent job of managing pull requests and issues,
totally,
you can just burn down the whole product in like bloated stuff. Like
you have to say no a lot.
And you have to say no a ton. And this was sort of the crux of what started to show cracks in the React Next.js.
Okay, great.
System for us.
Perfect segue.
So, after we started like getting some big stuff done, and there was dozens of pull requests from lots of from people on lots of different issues, it despite there being a lot of work to be done and like those being listed as issues to tackle, people very quickly started focusing on the like semantic stuff, like how do we format this function? Well, that's not the way to do it these days. Like, let's refactor all this stuff that like changes zero functionality. And it's like, oh, I prefer to have this sort of format. Well, I prefer to have that format. And like people just start,
style wars erupt, basically.
Yes. And at the same time, again, when we started with Next.js, it was like they have their pages router and their like app router thing, which app router essentially adds a bunch of back-end functionality. Okay. We were using the original pages thing, but it was because we had so many disjointed different pieces. It made most sense for us to try to convert a bunch of this stuff over to their like new app router thing. But even if we didn't do that, it was starting to become very clear, like, we're going to have to rewrite a bunch of stuff, if only to remove complexity from all these previous decisions around our, app that had to meet all these different compliance regulatory things and other features that are getting ripped out and like not needing Plaid anymore. And how do you decouple Plaid so that we're not depending on it in every single database table? So we're having to rip out a ton of stuff and rewrite it anyways. Yep.
And are you changing user-facing functionality, or is it mostly rewriting how it's done? This is basically a huge refactor.
That's essentially it. Okay. And so like that led to a lengthy conversation with Vercel, who's like behind Next.js. And they were great, like super smart people there. And trying to like just talking through, like they were familiar with our code base, spent time looking at our code base.
Cool.
Was like actually commenting on issues in the code base that people were having confusion over Next.js stuff. And like they were being active in the community, like, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But talking to them, it became clear that if we're trying to build something that's very easy to contribute to, that requires relatively little sort of like wrapping your head around where things are, it's hard to stick with something that is changing very fast, because we can't just like stake it in the ground of like, here's how we're doing this, because the reality is some of that the newest like Next.js stuff in 6 months will be different, and so we're gonna have to like refactor some stuff then, and like it just becomes the barrier to contribute becomes very high. And that was the case. That's like the symptom of that is people complaining over semantics, because they don't know how else to. Here's a list of things for you to contribute to and build, but you have no idea how to start building it because it's too confusing. Like there's stuff everywhere in this app, and so that was sort of like what kicked it off.
Is there not? Are there not good conventions in JavaScript world that like let people drop in and contribute because they just know where stuff is expected to be?
That would be great, but no, not when you're like, to me especially because of the stuff that Next.js has introduced in the past, that's probably 12 months. that sort of blew up the entire convention. And so there were lots of arguments over like, well, now this is the way that you do it in Next.js. Oh, okay. Well, that means rewriting all this other stuff. And like, it just became like the struggle when we were already going to have to refactor a ton of stuff more than like I probably realized at the beginning. It was like, well, like we can stick with something that's rapidly changing for better or worse, you know, whatever. It's a lot of work's being done around that. Or we can potentially do something that like me as the guy who's like the central foundation of this entire company from the beginning and will be with it for who knows how long. Like, there's also a need for like me to be able to maintain this thing and like be functional. We could stick with potentially a framework that's been around for 20 years and does have a lot of strongly set convention. Whether you like the convention or not, like it still has a lot of this is the, in this case, Rails way of doing things.
Yeah.
And
so you're like, we're making a Rails app.
That's right. So I was like, okay.
Do you want to hear something funny?
Sure.
So I ran a product at Thoughtbot called FormKeep. And it was a form backend as a service. It was like an endpoint you could post to with some form data, and we would like forward it on and like send you an email or like trigger Zappiers or things like that. Pretty simple app. We built it at a time when like everyone was like, we were using it as like a learn JavaScript experiment playground.
Sure.
I think it was maybe Backbone app or something. It was a little bit later than Backbone, but it was, you know, it was like not way later. And it was like, we wrote this really complicated JavaScript front end to show you a bunch of form entries. And it was kind of like a pretty basic-y CRUD interface. And it was pretty darn complicated. And when I took that product over, the first thing I did was rip out the JavaScript and replace it with just basic Rails views.
Sure.
And it made it so much easier to work on.
That's right.
And some of that's my personal bias because I'm a Rails expert, but not a JavaScript expert.
Right.
So like some of that was like, I made the same decision that you are making, which is just like, I know I can do this one. There's definitely trade-offs here as it's not a pure win. But like for making a damn app, Rails is a pretty good choice. I still feel great about that choice.
Well, and especially, you know, this, I think in like the Rails sort of 6 era, it was rough on the front end stuff. And, but with all the Hotwire and all the whatever, you know, I use Hotwire in the like umbrella sense of Turbo, Stimulus, Strata, I think they have now. Like, it's become much more of like a first-class citizen on building these like really nice UI bits in a Railsy kind of way. And I think having spent the last 6 months of like floundering around, figuring out what on earth to do with maybe the entity, and experimenting with all sorts of stuff, I mean, there was a time where I was like doing Rails new like weekly, you know, like I'm just building a ton of Rails stuff. And so like I found myself when we're trying to make this decision between React and Rails, essentially, I found myself very confident in Rails' ability as a framework, both front end and back end, to be able to pull this off. And but I also understand people's hesitations because they're maybe a lot of times people haven't used Rails since Rails 6, or it's been 3, 4, 5 years, and a lot's changed in sort of the Rails world since then. And I don't know. I just feel a lot more confident in it now, and like our ability to foundationally build something that's very easy to jump in and start contributing to. It does reduce the number of developers available to us, but I think it probably increases the caliber.
Who knows?
So I want to be clear there that I'm not saying React developers aren't good developers. I think because there is so much, it's such a popular thing. It means that there is a lot more entry level availability because there's a ton of people. That's the thing they learn. And they're like, let me go contribute to something. It is popular with beginners. So you end up skewing towards a lot more entry level people.
Right. Especially if anyone can submit a pull request or something.
That's right.
On your open
so
source.
I think Rails, if only because of that single dynamic, tends to skew a little bit more towards people who are slightly more skilled.
That's probably true. I feel like that wasn't exactly true in my day. Like Rails was the thing, but then I think this has just shifted. This is just the new reality.
That's right. So, and so far, that's actually, I would say, has proven to be the case.
Cool. You've been happy with the caliber of Rails people you're seeing?
That's correct. Now, there's still certainly some people, it's like disagreements over how to do this, or people sort of overcomplicate things or whatever, but that's programming.
Dude, conventions for open source things, for anything, it's just like if you just have strong app conventions, I think that's such a huge win. It makes it so much easier to drop in and do something productively because you just know where stuff will be and where your changes got to go.
Exactly. So that's sort of how we ended up on the Rails thing. I think we covered how we ended up.
I'm convinced.
Did we touch the bases on that?
Mega Rails app. You sold me.
Yeah, sorry, that's right. So we literally started from scratch.
You okay.
I mean, I Rails newed it.
Yeah, so you're not refactoring anything. You are rewriting from scratch.
We're rewriting from scratch. And the caveat there, though, is like that I think makes this different than, oh man, you're having to remake all these decisions. We're not having to remake all these decisions because one thing we're very confident in was like the data modeling that we had done in the previous app. And there's a lot of decisions around product functionality that like have already been made, like how we're doing this stuff. And so,
do you know that you've made something people want yet, though, product decision wise?
I believe that we have, but I mean, like there's almost, we can't know that because we never built a successful business, like right.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of assumptions being made here. And
yeah. So you're gonna just like accept all the product decisions you've already made. You're not like also changing functionality yet.
Essentially, yes, same product decisions. However, we will, because we're doing this rewrite, and so that means we're still building a feature, then the next feature, and the next feature. We will put this out in the public far sooner, right? Like, you'll be able to start using this stuff way before it gets to the feature parity to the previous.
Oh, okay, great, cool. Yeah, because it seems maybe weird to re-implement product decisions if you're not confident about them, but also trying to change them as you rewrite it also seems insane to me. So
there's a lot of variables there that's like, okay, how can we ultimately prove that people want something? And we're essentially doing that by making similar product decisions, but testing the waters with them before there's a lot of decisions to get feedback on. Okay. So, that's starting off by just like being able to add a bank account and the transactions with them. And then let's see what people say about that. So like very basic stuff.
Okay. And how are you getting the transactions? So you're hosting this and charging people for it, right?
Eventually, yes.
Okay,
we're not there yet. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, we should be there by the end of the month, but yeah. So the initial manual input will be balance-based, and then you can input individual transactions one at a time or upload CSVs of transaction data.
Okay.
So that'll be the initial pass at that.
Cool. Okay. And you'll hope to sign up some customers who want to pay for whatever
something like that. It'll be real. I mean, even not at whatever full price we decide is what you should be paying for, but just to like say if somebody's willing to pay $5 a month, then like that gives some level of validation. Like if they'll give a credit card, then okay, we've proven something. Mm-hmm. So going back to the rebuilding the same features, I say that the way that we view this is a little bit different this time around. Like instead of it just being this sort of, before maybe it was much more on the like wealth management side of things, and let's grow our investments and like figure out where to put money and so that it'll grow, and like this is part of having a financial advisor who can help you make decisions about what to put money where. We are changing that to be, so like our first big feature will not be the forecasting stuff. It'll be budgeting. So part of the opportunity here comes from Mint shutting down and there being 4 million plus people who like have used Mint for a decade and now are like, what do I do? Like I have nothing. And you'll see like I've seen some stuff on some like private data around other say budgeting tools in the market and what this Mint thing has done for their growth over the past couple months. And it's like straight up because people are just looking for something. Yeah. And so I think there's an opportunity to sort of capitalize on that with a budgeting tool.
I think you have to be fast though, right?
No, and that's the thing. Like
No?
again,
You don't think so?
that by the end of the month we'll have something there to start using, and then like
Gotcha.
the first thing we're building on top of that is budgeting.
Okay. I guess what I'm saying, I think this opportunity of the X-Mint customers probably is short. Like,
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. But it's just like the market is that was the thing that everybody was coming from before. When we would talk to people 2 years ago about maybe it's like, what are you using now? Mint. Everybody's using Mint. And now it immediately goes to 20 other tools. So like nobody's taking the lion's share from them. And so I think the market has become much more fragmented. And so there's opportunity that will stay around for at least a little bit longer than just a single flash in the pan. But the way that we're thinking about maybe at this point is much more modular based on where you're at in your like financial journey. So my 19-year-old daughter who works at Starbucks, I picture her using maybe for budgeting, and that's it. Eventually she's like, gets to a point where she's like, okay, I want to save up and buy a house. Okay. So like now we can talk, there's like a save component that you could, or module or set of tools that come with that, you know, and then it's like eventually you start a family. And so it's like, okay, now we've got like joint stuff to take into account. And then saving up for kids and there, if you have to do like an educational savings thing, like there's all these sort of steps that happen in like a financial journey. And there's no reason, most people do not handle all of them at the same time. You're not piling up the same stuff, right? And like, for instance, okay, so we sold a company, we've got a big pile of money. We care a little bit less about budgeting than we did pre-acquisition, right? So it's like, I care less about budgeting tools. And like, either way. So we now view it as the kind of tool that you literally use until you die.
What do you want to use maybe for?
So for us, it's let's track all of investments ultimately. Like that's the component or module that I'm personally most interested in. So
what are you doing for that now?
Nothing great. I mean, the closest thing I've sort of found is Kubera. So it does a decent job of aggregating lots of data sources, but I don't think it just sort of like reports on a bunch of numbers. And I don't think it doesn't really do anything to help affect those numbers, I guess. And we sort of view providing stuff for you to be more hands-on with your money, or with that suggestions or like reminders that, hey, it's tax time in your region. So like you should talk to a CPA or something like that. So, but I feel a lot less urgency this time around, which some would argue be better or worse. But if I view building maybe as something that like I will personally be involved in for the next 10 to 20 years, and I view it as the kind of, we're building tools that people will use for a lifetime, there is a lot less urgency to like do something, pay $500, to acquire a customer and then hope that we can make that back over the course of a couple of years. Like I can take much longer term, long play risks because I'm not needing to, end up, I'm avoiding where we ended up last summer, which is like a runway that we can't support,
Well, yeah. And you just got another $1 million and you have 2 paid people, or like
1.5 million and yes, 2 full-time from a salary perspective. Yeah.
And then a bunch of open source contributions, which
that's right.
Are those overall like been very helpful? Like, are they making like good decisions, big strides, helping you out a lot?
So what I've found is you start seeing like a few people who are heavily invested as an open source contributor. And so you don't necessarily see them tackling every issue, though they do tackle some of them, but they're like commenting on code of like, hey, we did this in this other commit, like, here's how we can sort of stick with that convention that this app has. So I would say that it feels like you find people who sort of bubble up, who are super invested in contributing, and other people who like come and go, whatever, which is fine. But we're also playing around with like bounties and, paying people for certain features and functionality. And
any results from that yet?
Yeah, I mean, we've paid out almost $3,000 in bounties over the past couple weeks.
Cool.
I'm still trying to figure out like what's a reasonable amount that's not like offensive. Like, you want to only pay me $100 for this? Like, well, it's not so much I just want to like convey sort of a thank you for your time and that this is important to us. But like, you know, I don't know. That's a weird line to walk on, but you know, so we're experimenting, I guess, with that at least. And I want to pay people, especially if they're contributing something that has a commercial benefit to us directly. So, you know, if it's like implementing some Stripe stuff, well, like the self-hoster doesn't give a rip about that. They will never use that. So that's like a prime candidate for us to do some sort of bounty.
Totally.
Because it's of only commercial benefit to us. So
cool.
Yeah, we're playing with that stuff too.
What's next in your mind? What's coming down the pipe?
Get the thing working. You know, having a functional personal finance app.
Meaning hosted somewhere.
Hosted. Yeah. Like you could go sign up at baby.co. That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll get there quickly. It'll just be really basic, and but it'll also change really fast. Like it took us a long time to build that sort of React version for a lot of different reasons, not just because, it's like React's slow to develop with. Like, I'm not saying that. It's just we had to make a lot of decisions that we've now thought through the pros and cons of a lot of those decisions, so we can remake similar decisions now with much greater speed. And I think we also happen to have a code base that lends itself to working quickly. So
cool.
Yeah, it's just start making some money, like not wait 18 months again to try to.
Are you gonna charge people right away? Customers instead of testers?
Yes. I mean, that's the plan, is like, okay, we'll, you know, have some sort of like early customer discount or something, because it's, you know, very basic functionality, but and figuring out what that looks like around, like, obviously we'll want to test out freemium, and most financial tools start with some sort of free component. So like we're competing against that.
I would want to see you charge for it, for everybody.
I mean, that'd be great.
Just to make sure that like people value this and you're making something they actually want. Like get the money, you know?
Yeah. And then we can also play around with the free side down the road.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. Cool. Awesome, man. Good luck. I hope it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the whole, what a story. That was great.
It's bonkers. It's
totally
insane.
bonkers.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's awesome. I hope it works out, because I want the ending to be great, you know? Like just finish the story, all right? Like you need to make this business a huge success.
I know.
The framing of like what if it was a thing you used for your whole life is interesting. Like it's kind of audacious. It's like, our LTV is going to be like $100,000 because they're going to be a customer for 40 years.
For 50 years.
I love the idea of it. Yeah. And like, I don't know if you'll be able to pull that off, but almost like the orientation of like trying to do it. You know,
for sure.
Like aim for the moon sort of thing. Aim for the stars.
Look, it's like, imagine the internet 20 years ago. Like the idea that somebody would have built something 20 years ago and that they're still using that thing today is super rare. Sure. And I think of like, I have an eBay, my eBay account might be 15 years old or something like that. But like,
sure. Yeah. My Reddit account's real old. It's in the teens.
Yeah, mine is probably similar. But again, like you're directionally, if we're making decisions that support that type of outcome.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That seems good. Like you'll like be like, I'm not going to make the short-term trade-off ever, because what I care about is the long term.
I don't have to. That's right. And
you're like, exactly. I'm already rich, and we raise a bunch more money.
I'm so hesitant to ever be like, well, I've got a lot of money. Like,
sure, but it matters.
But it does. It changes. It changes the types of problems that like I'm willing to tackle, because it doesn't matter to me if I personally make some money. Now, do I want to like do right by our 1,732 investors from our crowdfund thing? Like, yeah, you know, that was the reason that we pivoted and tried this whole Detangled thing, is because like I didn't want to just shut it down and be like, sorry guys, you lost all your money. Like I do want people to become whole as much as is possible, because that's how my brain works. But like at the same time, I don't personally it's not like, well, I need a paycheck, so we need to figure out how to do something today in the for a short-term win, you know? So
cool. I guess just, the alarm bell rings a little bit though, which is like that seems great, but also don't go slow. Sure.
My brain also doesn't let me move out. I have to not be bored. So
Yeah.
I have to be working towards and like seeing progress. It's just, I don't like the feeling of like, well, we need to figure this out tomorrow.
Sure.
Well,
Totally.
we can give it a few days. It's okay.
Nice. All right. You talk about Detangled just a little bit because it seems like that kind of is working. And I played with it a little bit and found it like nice.
Yeah. So, you're familiar with this where, especially in business, you just get contracts for all sorts of stuff, even if it's like an NDA, but any kind of business acquisitions or just business agreements or employment agreements, whatever it is. You get a lot of this stuff, even if it's only a couple pages long, it's still full of legalese. And you're just like, what does all this stuff mean? It's whatever. So that was the impetus for like, well, it'd be cool if you could translate this into, I say like human speak. And so built Detangled to do that, where you just upload a document. It's ultimately getting processed by GPT on the back end. And like, but it breaks it down into these different modules. Like we have this like favor scale thing where it tells you, this document favors party A more than it favors party B, and here's why.
Yeah.
Here's, all the money stuff that's in the document, and here's
that part. That part's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it is pretty cool overall.
Yeah, I think it's
it's right now it's one-off charges per document, so there's no subscription component. It's one of those things that
how much revenue has it done?
I don't at this point. I mean, it's not a ton. It's like maybe $4,000 or $5,000 or something. Like in these one-off couple months,
2 months,
a little bit less. Yeah.
Okay.
It's the kind of thing that's like it feels like there's something there. We're probably not the people to tackle it. I just don't know what to do with it now. Because it's part of maybe Finance Inc. Like it's under that umbrella.
Oh,
so it complicates things. Like I've had people be like, well, let's do like a rev share thing and like but it's like, well, it's technically owned by this C Corp. And how do we detach it and do something with it? Or I don't know.
Interesting.
So
is anybody like asking you, like, are people asking for new features or like raving about it?
Yeah,
like,
people want subscriptions.
They want to do a bunch of docs every month.
Right. And there's some like,
people
wanting to be able to ask questions of the document, like the sort of typical sort of chat, like especially if you've got a long document, it becomes kind of valuable to be able to like, wait, what was that thing where it said this thing about the thing? So,
totally. Yeah, I can see that.
We played around with like a couple of big organizations. Open Door was one that we had a lot of conversations with, where they do the like buy and sell houses. Like they'll buy your house from you, and then you can also buy houses from Open Door. So they're dealing with a bajillion different documents around homeowners associations and but also buying houses. And so like they want to be able to dump in tons of documents and pull out information from them. And so it's like, okay, maybe there is a commercial sort of
sounds like
there.
Very much there is to me.
Right. And so
I hear that you're not into it. I'm not trying to sell you on it. It just sounds interesting.
No, but it's like, I do think there is something there. And I hesitate to just be like, well, that was the opportunity cost, like shut it down, whatever, maybe is a bigger opportunity. But it's like, I don't know. Like if that's what hate.
Is it though? I don't know. I mean, maybe I am trying to sell you a little bit. Maybe I am trying to sell you a little bit, which is that one of these things already is making money.
Sure.
And it's got some,
I think, but that's where this goes into the like, what's like, I want to tackle like Moonshot stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but it is also the reason why I haven't just like, well, we'll shut down the servers and call it a day. It's because like I still feel strong that there is something there. I just don't know what our angle is.
Does ChatGPT give you good enough results?
So there's that of like, will ChatGPT get to a point where like we've heavily massaged the prompts on the back end to be able to spit out this stuff in a usable way. But does ChatGPT get good enough, or like do these things like templates where you can just be like, here are my pre-written blocks. Let me throw this at a document and get the output of it. Well, then that's essentially what Detangled's doing at the moment. Like we're sort of taking chunks of this and just asking different questions of it and then summarizing it in these little blocks. And you could do that over and over again with ChatGPT.
I guess what I'm asking is the stuff that's coming out about the legal documents like legally smart enough? Is it like
Sure.
enough like what a lawyer would tell you that knew what they were doing?
Well, I mean, the line that we sort of walk there is saying like this isn't a replacement for a lawyer. If anything, it's to like augment your conversations with your lawyer so that you know what to ask them about.
That's I like that. And are you? And it sounds like you are delivering that. People seem to
I think so.
feel that way.
Very consistently, it's been like, man, this was amazing. I don't have any more documents to detangle, but I love it.
Yeah, that was me.
Sure. I mean, that's sort
I was
of
buying something. I had one.
That's the crux is like,
But I mean, when I was doing sales for Tuple, I had a lot of documents in my life.
sure. So I think there is a commercial component where you could sell to companies and just say like, and especially companies that were at the point where like they didn't have full-time counsel or something, like
Yeah.
they don't have which is like every
Probably a lot of
small
them.
business.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, there are so many angles that have been left unexplored with that. And
But you only get one life, so you got to work on the thing
I
that
know.
excites you.
I know.
But traction can be really exciting, right? Yeah.
Look, there's either way. I'm all in on maybe. So, but it's
Sick.
just, but I'm not so all in that I am willing to like throw out detangle. Not that I'll keep working on it, but like I want someone else to do it. I just don't know how to format that.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool, man. This is great. I love chatting.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad that you had me on, man. You're only you're a couple of episodes into this thing, right?
Yeah. I think this is 4
All right.
or 3. I forget. Anyway. Yeah. You're early. You're single digit. You're below 5 for sure.
Look at that, man. I'll make note of that somewhere.
I'm going to try to make this. I'm going to try to make this cool for you so that one day you can be like, I was on episode 4.
I was in single digit episodes.
All right. Take it easy.
All right. Thanks, Ben. Have a good one.
See ya.